Dan Whittaker. I'm here today to talk to you about shot shaping within the golf swing, and I'm going to use some Trackman information to help back up all of the points we're going to make to show the validity of the style of the shot, the shaping of the shot, and show how a draw and a fade pretty much go exactly the same distance. Because obviously people back in the day used to think that a draw went so much further than a fade. So we're going to expel that myth and show why it isn't the case that the draw goes further than the fade. Now, we know that when we strike a golf ball correctly these days, we know that it's just the arc of approach, okay, into the golf ball that dictates the style of shot that we're going to play. So we know that if a club comes more from the inside, then generally it's going to have a curvature that will have a right to left bias on it. We know that if a golf club attacks the ball from more out to in, that it will have a more of a cut spin or a ball flight that has a left to right bias on it. Golf ball, when struck correctly on with Trackman figures, that will have a path that is 0 and a face angle that is also 0, will have a spin axis for the golf ball that is 0. So it means that the golf ball, based off these two lines here, these two vectors, the golf ball spins at 90 degrees to these two vectors, and so doesn't have any side spin. Now, side spin is simply like the wings on a plane. So a draw biased will have more of a leftward tilt, and a fade bias will have more of a rightward tilt. Now, in a well-struck golf shot, the amount of curvature is only ever seen at the apex of the shot. So that is when the spinning of the golf ball gets to its slowest and gravity drags it down, and it drags it down dependent on which tilt axis it is spinning on. Now, people always used to think that the draw went further than the fade because traditionally people have held the face open in order to hit a fade, or heavily released the fade and flipped the hands over in order to hit a draw. Now, the golf ball is only on the face for 4/10,000th of a second. So if you are trying to control spin and shot shape through the rotation or the slowing down of the rotation of the club face, then you're in for a pretty difficult time in terms of being able to control that shot, because the ball's on the face for such a short amount of time that there's no way that you're going to be able to reliably time that. Now, this white light rod here is depicting the ball to target line. Now, what we would want to have is, we've got two vectors here, a bottom vector and a top one. This one dictates the club face, and this one will dictate the path. So if we want to hit a draw golf shot, we know that we want the path to be from the inside, so that will be pointing to the right of target. And if we want the ball to start to the right of target to hit the true draw, we want the club face to also be pointing there. But when we look at it compared to the ball to target line, we see that the path is to the right, the face is also to the right, but the face is pointing in between, where it is pointing in between both of these two vectors. So the ball will start on the face and then it will curve back to the target. So ideally, let's say you're trying to hit a baby 1 yard draw, you'd want to have the path around 1.6 degrees from the inside, and you want the face angle around 0.8 of a degree open. This means that the ball will start to the right and then drop back to the target. Conversely, if you wanted to hit a fade, we would have this bottom vector, which is path, will be aimed to the left, so this is out to in, with a club face that is also slightly closed, okay, but again the club face is angled in between the ball to target line and the path. So to hit the pure fade, let's say we had a 1.6 angle again, so you'd have a minus figure of the face, a minus figure of the path, so it'd be an out to in path with a slightly closed face, would get the ball starting to the left of target, and then the spin axis would then allow it to drop back to the target. You can imagine now, I've got this tennis racket to show the club face. If you've got a club face that is coming through and you're trying to say cut it and hold it like this, you've got to figure out the amount that the face is open, or you've got one that is heavily releasing to hit the draw. You've got to control the closure rate. Now what actually happens is, we want this club to react to the body. So physics is taking control of the golf swing, and the club releases exactly the same on a draw as it does a fade. So the club will be at 90 to the arc coming in until the club's got much more energy in than the body has got. So the club passes the hands, which sees the club fully released here. It doesn't cause the forearms to touch because the left wrist recups, which allows the club face to release as the right wrist goes into extension. So that is when a golf club gets fully released. Now we can hit draws and fades on both of those. So first off, going to hit a small draw shot. So in order to hit the draw shot, I'm going to have my body aimed, okay, to the right of the target. I'm going to have my club face aimed to the right as well, but my club face will be aimed in between where my body is positioned and the target. Now, we know that there's some players out there, like the likes of Fred Couples, who are able to hit draws from an open stance. Now, I fully believe that the amount of rotation or openness you've got from the upper body at impact controls the amount of curvature or the shape with which you get at impact or get on the golf ball. So to hit a draw, we know that the upper body is more closed relative to the target line, or squarer to the target line at impact, than a fade. So a fade has always got the upper body more open in relation to ball to target line this way than a draw will have. So the number one aspect I'm going to control here to hit my draw is I'm going to put the ball a fraction further back in the stance so that I hit it a little bit earlier in the circle. I'm then going to make sure that my shoulders are a little bit more closed, because when my shoulders are a little bit more closed, it means that I am able to guarantee that I'm going to hit it a little bit more from the inside. I've got my club face very slightly open, just pointing to the right of the target line. Then from here, I'm going to make my normal golf swing, because my shoulders are going to dictate, along with the ball being a little bit further back in the stance, I'm going to hit it earlier in the circle, creating more of a right to left spin on the golf ball. So that one there had a draw bias on it. So if we go to the Trackman, you can see here on the draw, the club path is coming from the inside 1.5 degrees with the face angle 0.3 of a degree open. So it's got a relationship from the face to path, which is 1.2 degrees. So it's got a spin axis of 1.7, so it's got a very, very gentle little draw, and it's finished 3.5 feet off target. It's had a spin rate of 5,940, and I've hit down on it 3.6 degrees. But the interesting bit is, it's got a club head speed of 85.8, which is not so bad, especially as I haven't been doing any practice. So this was a fairly well struck shot, and it didn't have that much curvature to it. I can see there that that was struck 1.5 degrees from the inside. So that created that little bit of draw, okay, that I was looking for. My club face was open at impact, and that was a pretty well struck shot. Now I'm going to hit you a little fade. So this time I'm going to have my club face aimed to the left of the target, so it's a little bit closed. I'm going to have my stance open, I'm going to have my upper body open because that's going to help me control that out to in path I want to create. Obviously I want my upper body a little bit more open at impact. And I'm going to have the ball a tiny bit further forwards in the stance because obviously I want to ensure that the club face is closing very slightly at impact so that the ball can start to the left and cut onto the target. I'm not going to try and hold this open at all because obviously that's going to mean that I'm going to reduce my power. I'm going to hold off the face, I'm going to be slowing down the rotation of my body and therefore slowing down the speed the club head's going to be moving at. So, we'll hit the fade. We'll take a look at the Trackman information after that.
So we can now see with the fade here, it had an out to in path of 2.4 degrees and a spin rate of 6,040. So it's only 100 more RPM than the draw. So that's fairly interesting for a lot of people because you'd expect to see quite a much higher spin rate. The angle of attack is only 0.4 of a degree more down. And the club head speed's pretty much in exactly the same vicinity. I think it's kind of 0.5, 0.6 of a mile of an hour slower. But interestingly enough, the ball's gone 4 to 5 yards further. So it's very interesting because obviously spin rate higher, launching a little bit higher, all of these things, you'd expect the ball to maybe go a little bit shorter, but it goes to show that the amount of speed that you can generate with a fade that is hit correctly without the manipulation of the club face and the slowing down of the body can actually gain you.
What we saw there was that the fade actually went a little bit further than the draw and it only had 100 RPM more. So we can see that, you know, that we're not necessarily talking that a draw necessarily goes that much further than a fade these days. Now we'll go back to the Trackman information.
We can see here with the fade on the screen, we can see that it's got 6,040 RPM, and we can see that the draw had 5,940. So it's only 100 RPM more on the fade than the draw. What we'll notice is dynamic loft on the draw was 22 degrees and it's 22.5 on the fade, so it's a touch higher. Everything's just a little higher, the attack angle's a little tiny bit more, 0.3 of a degree more down, but the club head speed is 1 mile an hour more on the draw here than on the fade. But this is very interesting in that the smash factor on the fade is just a tiny bit higher than on the draw, so it obviously shows it was caught a little bit more out the middle of the face, which probably attributes to the fact why it went a fraction further. That also goes along with what my feelings are, that I tend to feel like I get a bit more on top of it, I strike it a little better from being a little bit more open. But the facts and figures here of the club head speed, the spin rate, the dynamic loft, and then the face to path relationships, it just goes to show though that the fallacy of saying a draw goes further than a fade is no longer true.
For a 6 iron there, that's pretty much up there with my standard distances I'd expect to hit my personal 6 iron. And we can see there though that the shot shape has been controlled by the body, but people that say the fade goes that much shorter than the draw, it's completely incorrect. We can obviously see that the fade there has gone a little bit further than the draw. Now for me, I always know that I hit the fade a touch further myself because when I feel a little bit more open at address, I feel I've got more space to move into. Okay, when I look closed down, I feel like the space is slightly taken away from me. Okay, that's my own personal feeling. But a lot of my good players that I teach, I tend to see that they can hit their fade perhaps just a tiny little bit further than they can their draws. Now, if we take a look at that roof mount camera, we can see that a player here hitting a draw has the shoulders a little bit more closed, and a person hitting a fade has got the upper body a little bit more open.
Now we've got two players here of very equal standard, both off +1. We've got Chris on the right, and we have Reese on the left. Okay. So we'd see here that Reese is much more open with the upper body relative to the ball to target line than Chris is. Now we see here with Reese, Reese is twice as much open at impact, or over twice as much, than Chris is. Chris is going to hit a draw, Reese is going to hit a fade. Now they're both open, creating room for the arms to be able to come through with the body, because they have to be open in order to allow the club face to release properly without any stalling or any manipulation from the right hand. It's exactly the same position in the swing frame as the ball has only just released from the face, but what we see with Reese is he's just a lot more open, so obviously he's going to be cutting across it a little bit more, whereas Chris is a little bit squarer on. This isn't to say that one is right over the other, this is just their preferred ball flights, both of great standards, these players. Reese is playing for England, he's an England international as a junior, but it's very interesting that he is that much more open at impact based off his preferred ball flight.
Now, having seen that information there, you can therefore see on the screen the difference between the two players, one being a little open, one being a little bit closed, but then therefore what their ball flights or corresponding ball flights are going to be. I found this to be very interesting now, to find that the draw and the fade go the same distance, or in effect at times for me the fade goes a little longer, so that knuckleball fade that people talk about, or the power fade, does exist. It's a fully released move. Okay, it's something that I'm a big fan of, particularly in my own game and all of my students' game. I think there's a lot of people who fade the ball off the tee, but fade it properly, are very accurate drivers of the golf ball, but hit it a long way. So I think that this is a very reliable way to shape the golf ball, because from here all you're doing is you're just changing your statics, you're simply changing ball position and alignment, using the factors that we know that upper body alignment and impact dictates the arc of approach of the club head, and then it's very easy to put the same golf swing on it and just change the ball flight. It's very difficult to do it with the hands and arms because you're bringing a lot of timing elements into the game, and meaning it's pretty difficult for you to actually do that on a reliable basis. I hope you've really enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more from myself, please visit my website, which is danwhittakergolf.com. Follow me on Twitter at dwhitakergolf, or my Facebook page, which is Dan Whittaker Golf. Please feel free to contact me and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll be speaking with you again soon.